Deep beneath the Imperial Palace on the planet Gorieo Prime, there was a cell that no one talked about. It had no name on any map. It appeared in no official record, but everyone in the palace knew it was there, and everyone was afraid of it. The cell was old. It was older than the Empire itself. It was older than the first starships, older than the first wars between species, older than memory. Some said it had been there since the universe was young. Others said it was even older than that. Inside the cell, something lived, something waited, something breathed in the darkness where no light could reach. They called it many names: the beast of Cell Zero, the silent one, the thing that watches, but most simply called it the creature because no one knew what it really was. The ancient records described it as a massive animal like a cat but much larger. Its body stretched 12 meters long. Its fur was black, so black that it seemed to eat the light around it. Its eyes burned like dying stars. But the most terrible thing about the creature was not its size or its appearance. It was what happened to anyone who came close to it. For 3,821 years, the creature had been alone. In all that time, no living being had been able to approach its cell. Soldiers had tried. Scientists had tried. Brave warriors from 100 different species had walked down the long corridor towards Cell Zero. None of them had reached the door. The creature did not attack them. It did not need to. It simply existed, and its existence was enough. It sent out waves of pure terror, a psychic field so powerful that it crushed the minds of anyone who came near. Strong warriors fell to their knees at 50 meters. At 30 meters, they began to scream. At 20 meters, their minds broke completely. Some died. Some went mad. Some simply stopped existing as if the fear had erased them from reality. So the Empire did the only thing it could do. It sealed the corridor. It posted guards who were ordered to never go past the warning line. It tried to forget that the creature existed at all. But now, after nearly 4,000 years, Emperor D had a problem. The creature was dying. Emperor D was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had ruled the 1,000-star empire for 400 years. He had seen wars and peace, birth and death, the rise and fall of civilizations. He thought he had seen everything. But he had never seen anything like the report that sat on his desk. The creature in Cell Zero had not eaten in 3,821 years. It had survived somehow, drawing energy from sources no one understood. But now its body was failing. The sensors showed its life signs growing weaker every day. Within a year, perhaps less, it would be dead. Most people would think this was good news. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy was finally dying. The Empire could sleep safely at night. But Emperor D knew better. He had read the ancient prophecies, the ones that were kept in the deepest vaults of the palace. He knew what the old writings said would happen if the creature died. The unraveling of the veil, the return of the darkness, the end of all stars. The prophecies were unclear, as prophecies always were, but the message was simple enough. If the creature died, something terrible would follow, something worse than the creature itself. Emperor D called a meeting of his advisors. They came from every corner of the empire, the wisest minds of 1,000 worlds. They argued for days. They proposed solutions and rejected them. They searched ancient databases and found nothing useful. The problem was simple but impossible. To save the creature, someone had to feed it. To feed it, someone had to enter its cell. To enter its cell, someone had to survive the walk down the corridor, and no one could survive that walk. Then, on the 5th day of the meeting, a junior diplomat raised his hand. He was young and nervous, and he almost did not speak. But he had heard a rumor, and he thought it might be important. Humans, he said, the new species, the ones from the small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. They were strange. Their minds were different from other species. Telepaths could not read their thoughts clearly. Psychic attacks did not work properly against them. Their minds were too chaotic, too noisy, too full of random thoughts and feelings. The council laughed. Humans were primitive. They had only joined the Empire a few decades ago. They were considered weak, unimportant, barely worth noticing. How could such a simple species succeed where the greatest warriors had failed? But Emperor D did not laugh. He sat in silence for a long moment thinking. Then he gave an order. "Bring me a human." Far away, on a small research station orbiting a forgotten moon, a young woman named Yuna was finishing her work for the day. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien animals. It was not an important job. She worked with small creatures, helping them adapt to new environments, treating their illnesses, learning their behaviors. She was good at her work, but no one outside her station had ever heard her name. Yuna was 28 years old. She had grown up on Earth Colony 7, a farming world where humans lived simple lives among fields and forests. She had always loved animals. When she was a child, she had rescued a wild creature that everyone said was dangerous. They told her it would bite her, hurt her, maybe kill her. But she approached it anyway, slowly and calmly, and the creature had let her help it. That was her gift. She was not brave in the way soldiers were brave. She simply did not feel fear the way others did. When she looked at a dangerous animal, she did not see a threat. She saw a creature that needed help. Her communication screen lit up with an urgent message. Imperial Seal, highest priority. She was ordered to report to Goryeo Prime immediately. No explanation was given. That night she called her sister Hana. Hana was younger, still living on Earth Colony 7, still working in the fields where they had grown up together. When she heard about the summons, her face went pale. "Do not go," Hana begged. "Imperial summons never mean anything good. They will use you for something dangerous. They do not care about humans." Yuna smiled sadly. She knew her sister was probably right, but she also knew she had no choice. When the Emperor called, you answered. "I will be careful," Yuna said. "I will come home." Hana wiped tears from her eyes. "You promise?" "I promise." 3 days later, Yuna stood in the throne room of the Imperial Palace. It was the largest room she had ever seen, with ceilings that disappeared into shadow and walls covered in gold and precious stones. She felt very small, very human, very alone. Emperor D sat on his throne, ancient and powerful, his eyes studying her like she was an insect under a microscope. Around him stood his advisors, his guards, his servants. They all looked at her with the same expression: curiosity, doubt, pity. The Emperor spoke, his voice filling the massive room. "You will feed the beast," he said, "or the stars themselves will die." Yuna swallowed hard. She did not understand what he meant. She did not know about the creature in Cell 0, about the prophecies, about the 3,821 years of failure and death. But she would learn, and when she did, she would have to make a choice that would change the galaxy forever. They gave Yuna 3 days to prepare, 3 days to learn about the creature, 3 days to understand what she was walking into, 3 days to say goodbye to everything she knew. Captain T was assigned to watch over her. He was a military officer, tall and stern, with scars on his face from battles Yuna could not imagine. He did not like humans. He thought they were soft and weak, not worthy of being part of the Empire. But orders were orders, and the Emperor had spoken. On the first day, Captain T took Yuna to a room deep beneath the palace. The room was called the Wall of the Lost. It was covered with small metal plates, each one carrying a name and a date. Thousands of names, thousands of dates. All the beings who had tried to approach Cell 0, all the beings who had failed. The first names were more than 3,000 years old. The most recent was from just 50 years ago. After that, the Empire had stopped trying. There was no point in sending more people to die. Yuna stood before the wall in silence. She read the names one after another. She did not recognize any of them, but she understood what they meant. These were brave souls, every single one. Warriors and scientists, volunteers and prisoners, all of them walking toward the same darkness. All of them lost. "This is what waits for you," Captain T said. His voice was cold, but Yuna heard something else in it, something like sadness. "Do you understand now? No one survives the walk. No one." Yuna touched one of the metal plates gently. Then she turned to face the captain. "Tell me about the creature," she said. "Tell me everything." Captain T studied her for a long moment. Most people who saw the Wall of the Lost wanted to run away. Most people begged to be released from their duty. But this small human woman just stood there, calm and quiet, asking questions. He began to talk. The creature had been discovered long before the Empire existed. The first explorers who found this planet also found the cell beneath the mountains. They opened it, thinking they had found some kind of treasure. They were wrong. The creature killed the first team without moving. It killed the second team without looking at them. It killed the third team before they even entered the room. Its psychic field was so powerful that it could crush minds from a distance. Fear was its weapon, and it wielded that weapon perfectly. But the creature never tried to escape. It never attacked the palace above. It simply stayed in its cell, waiting. For what, no one knew. Over the centuries, the empire grew around the creature. The palace was built above its cell. Governments rose and fell. Wars were fought and won. And through all of it, the creature remained, silent, watching, alone. "What does it eat?" Yuna asked. "We do not know," Captain T admitted. "The ancient records mention food, but no one has been able to deliver any for thousands of years. We think it draws energy from somewhere else. Maybe from the fear itself. Maybe from something we cannot understand." Yuna thought about this. "And what happens when I reach the cell? What am I supposed to do?" Captain T almost laughed, but there was no humor in his eyes. "You assume you will reach the cell. At 50 meters, warriors stronger than any human have fallen. At 30 meters, they lose their minds. At 20 meters, they die. You will not reach the cell. No one ever does." "Then why am I here?" Yuna asked quietly. "Because the Emperor is desperate," Captain T said honestly. "Because humans are different from other species. Your minds are strange, chaotic. Telepaths cannot read you clearly. Maybe, just maybe, that chaos will protect you from the creature's psychic field. It is a small hope, but it is the only hope we have." On the second day, Yuna watched the recordings. Every attempt to reach Cell 0 had been documented. Cameras lined the corridor, capturing every moment of every failure. She sat in a dark room and watched them all. She saw warriors in heavy armor collapse like puppets with cut strings. She saw scientists with psychic shields scream until their voices broke. She saw prisoners who had been promised freedom if they succeeded crawl backward on their hands and knees, weeping, begging, broken. The recordings were difficult to watch, but Yuna forced herself to see everyone. She needed to understand what she was facing. At the end of the last recording, she noticed something strange. In the corner of the screen, there was a fragment of ancient text carved into the wall. She asked the computer to translate it. The word came back, "Guardian." Yuna frowned. She asked for more information, but the computer had nothing. The word appeared only once in that single recording. Someone had carved it into the wall long ago, and then someone else had tried to scratch it out. Guardian, not monster, not beast, guardian. What was the creature guarding? What had it been protecting all these years? Yuna did not sleep that night. She sat in her small room thinking about the word. Everyone called the creature a monster. Everyone assumed it was evil, dangerous, something to be feared. But what if they were wrong? What if the creature was not a prison but a guardian? What if it was not the threat but the protection against something worse? She thought about the animals she had worked with throughout her career. So many of them were called dangerous. So many of them were feared and hated. But when she approached them with kindness, when she showed them that she was not a threat, they often responded with gentleness. Maybe the creature was the same. Maybe after 3,821 years of being treated like a monster, it had forgotten how to be anything else. On the third day, the morning of the walk, Yuna woke up early. She ate a simple breakfast. She sent a message to her sister, telling her that she loved her. She did not mention what she was about to do. Hana would only worry. Captain T met her at the entrance to the long corridor. The corridor stretched before them, disappearing into darkness. At the far end, invisible in the shadows, was Cell 0. The Emperor himself came to watch. He stood behind a protective barrier with his advisors, their faces appearing on screens throughout the Empire. Every planet in 1,000 systems would see what happened today. Every species would watch as a single human woman attempted the impossible. "Do you have any final words?" Emperor D asked. Yuna looked at him. Then she looked at Captain T. Then she looked at the long, dark corridor that waited for her. "I do not plan to die today," she said simply, "so I will save my final words for later." She began to walk. The corridor was cold. Her footsteps echoed against the stone walls. She could feel something ahead of her, a pressure in the air, a weight on her mind. It grew stronger with every step. At 100 meters, she felt the first touch of fear. It was like a whisper in her head, a voice telling her to turn back, to run, to escape while she still could. She kept walking. At 70 meters, the fear grew louder. It was not a whisper anymore. It was a scream. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. Sweat dripped down her face. She thought about her sister. She thought about the rain on Earth. She thought about the song her mother used to sing when she was a child. She filled her mind with memories, with feelings, with the beautiful chaos of being human. At 50 meters, she reached the point where others had fallen. The psychic pressure was enormous. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down into an endless darkness. Every part of her body begged her to stop. But she did not stop. She took another step. The Empire watched in silence. Captain T held his breath. Emperor D leaned forward on his throne. Yuna kept walking. 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters. Her mind was screaming. Her body was shaking. But she did not fall. She did not break. She was a storm of thoughts and feelings and memories, and the creature's psychic field could not find a way through the chaos. At 10 meters, she reached the door to Cell 0. It was massive, ancient, covered in symbols she could not read. She placed her hand against the cold metal. The door opened. Inside, 2 burning eyes turned toward her. The creature was there, enormous and ancient, its black fur swallowing the light. It looked at her, and she felt its attention like a physical force. But she did not scream. She did not run. She stood at the threshold and met those burning eyes with her own. And in her mind she heard a voice, old and tired and surprised. "You are the first who has not screamed." Yuna took a deep breath, then she stepped inside. The inside of Cell 0 was nothing like Yuna expected. The darkness was absolute, so thick that it seemed to have weight. Even the light from the corridor behind her could not enter. It simply stopped at the doorway, as if afraid to go further. But somehow she could see the creature. It lay in the center of the cell, a massive shape that seemed to be made of shadows and starlight. Its body was skeletal, thin from thousands of years without food. Its fur, black as empty space, moved slightly even though there was no wind. Its eyes burned with a pale fire that gave off no warmth. It was dying. Yuna could see that immediately. Whatever this creature was, it had been fatting for a very long time. The great beast that had terrified the galaxy was now just a shadow of what it once must have been. She took a slow step forward, then another. The psychic pressure was still there, heavy and constant, but it was different inside the cell. Outside, it had felt like an attack. Inside, it felt more like a presence, like standing in a room with something ancient and powerful, uncomfortable but survivable. "You are small," the voice said in her mind. It was not words exactly. It was more like feelings that formed into meaning, small and fragile and strange. "Why did you not run like the others?" Yuna considered the question. She could feel the creature's attention focused entirely on her. It was not threatening her. It was genuinely curious. "I am not sure," she said aloud. Her voice sounded strange in the darkness, thin and small. "Maybe because I have always been better with animals than with fear." The creature made a sound. It might have been a laugh, or it might have been something else entirely. "I am not an animal," it said. "No," Yuna agreed. "I do not know what you are. But I know that you are hungry, and I know that you are alone, and I thought maybe I could help." For a long moment there was silence. The creature studied her with those burning eyes. Yuna felt like she was being examined, not just her body but her thoughts, her memories, her entire existence. The creature was looking at everything she was. "Your mind is loud," it said finally. "So much noise, so many thoughts and feelings all at once. How do you live like this?" Yuna almost smiled. "We are human," she said. "Our minds are always like this. We cannot turn it off." Fascinating. The creature shifted slightly, and Yuna saw how much effort even that small movement cost it. "The others who came before you, their minds were quiet, ordered, easy to read, easy to touch, easy to break. But your mind is chaos. I cannot find a path through it." "Is that why I did not fall?" Yuna asked. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you are simply foolish enough to walk into darkness without caring what waits inside." Yuna reached slowly into her bag. She had brought food, synthesized meat based on ancient records of what the creature might eat. The scientists were not certain it would work, but it was better than nothing. "I brought this for you," she said. "Will you eat?" The creature looked at the food. For a very long time it did not move. Then slowly it lowered its massive head toward her outstretched hand. Its breath was cold, like wind from a frozen star. Its teeth were enormous, sharp enough to tear through metal. But it ate gently. It took the food from her palm without touching her skin, and it swallowed in one careful motion. "When was the last time someone fed you?" Yuna asked quietly. "I do not remember," the creature said. "Time moves differently for me. Centuries feel like days, but it has been long, very long." Yuna took out more food and offered it. The creature ate again, then again. She emptied her entire bag, and still it was hungry. But it was also tired. Even eating seemed to exhaust it. "I will come back tomorrow," Yuna said. "I will bring more." "Why?" the creature asked. "Why do you help me?" "Because you need help," Yuna said simply, "and because no one else can." She turned to leave, but the creature's voice stopped her. "Wait, what do you call yourself?" "My name is Yuna." "Yuna," the creature seemed to taste the word, to consider it. "In all my years, no one has given me their name. They only call me monster, beast, thing." Yuna looked back at the massive shape in the darkness. "What would you like to be called?" The creature did not answer. Perhaps it had forgotten what it meant to have a name. Perhaps it had never had one at all. "I will think about it," Yuna said. "I will give you a name." She walked out of the cell, through the corridor, back into the light. Captain T was waiting for her, his face pale with disbelief. Behind him, the Emperor's advisors were talking rapidly among themselves. The screens showed images from all over the Empire, billions of beings watching in shock. Yuna had done what no one had done in nearly 4,000 years. She had entered Cell Zero. She had spoken with the creature. She had survived. "How?" Captain T asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "How did you do that?" Yuna thought about the question. "I do not know," she admitted. "I just walked, and I did not stop." Over the following weeks, Yuna returned to Cell Zero every day. She brought food. She brought water. She brought blankets, though she was not sure if the creature felt cold. She brought stories. That was the strangest part. The creature seemed hungry for more than just food. It wanted to know about the universe outside its cell. It wanted to know about humans, about Earth, about the small blue planet where Yuna had been born. So Yuna told it stories. She told it about the oceans and the mountains, about the cities and the forests. She told it about cats, the small animals on Earth that looked a little bit like the creature itself. She told it about how humans had lived with cats for thousands of years, how they had learned to love these small predators even though they were wild and independent and sometimes dangerous. The creature listened to everything. Sometimes it asked questions. Sometimes it shared its own memories, sending images directly into Yuna's mind. She saw glimpses of an ancient time before the empire, before the stars had names. She saw the creature when it was young and strong, standing beside others of its kind. She saw battles against something dark, something hungry, something that devoured everything it touched. But the memories were broken, fragmented by time. The creature itself did not understand what they meant anymore. It had been alone for too long. It had forgotten too much. One day, Yuna brought a name. "I want to call you Bjol," she said. "It is a word from my homeworld. It means star." The creature raised its head. "Star." "Yes," Yuna said, "because your eyes burn like stars, and because you have been here alone in the darkness for so long. But stars are not lonely. They are part of something bigger. And now maybe you can be too." For a long moment the creature was silent. Then slowly it made that strange sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. "Bjol," it said, "I have a name." From that day forward the creature was Bjol, and something began to change. Bjol grew stronger. The food was helping, but Yuna suspected it was more than that. The creature had been dying of loneliness as much as hunger. Having someone to talk to, someone who treated it with kindness instead of fear, was medicine for a wound that had been open for thousands of years. Captain T watched all of this from the monitors. At first, he thought Yuna was crazy. No one should treat such a dangerous creature like a pet. No one should sit beside it and tell it stories like they were friends. But as the weeks passed, he began to see something different. He saw the way Bjol responded to Yuna, gentle and careful despite its enormous size. He saw the way it listened when she talked, hanging on every word like a child hearing stories for the first time. Maybe, he thought, the humans were not so weak after all. Maybe their strength was simply different from what he expected. One evening, Bjol showed Yuna a vision. It was clearer than the others, more complete. She saw an ancient time, long before any of the current civilizations existed. She saw creatures like Bjol, dozens of them, standing together against a tide of darkness. She saw them fighting, dying, winning. And then she saw the darkness retreating, wounded but not destroyed. She saw it fleeing into the spaces between stars, waiting, healing, preparing to return. Bjol's final image was a warning. The darkness showed as a void that swallowed light, that consumed worlds, that ended everything it touched. "They are coming back," Bjol said in her mind. "That is why I was placed here, to guard, to watch, to wait. If I die, there will be no one left who remembers how to stop them." Yuna sat in silence, the weight of the vision heavy on her shoulders. She had come here to feed an ancient creature. She had not expected to discover that the fate of the galaxy might depend on keeping it alive. But now she knew the truth. This was not just about saving Bjol. This was about saving everything. Yuna went to the Emperor the next morning. She walked into the throne room without waiting for permission, without following the proper ceremonies. The guards tried to stop her, but something in her eyes made them step back. Emperor D watched her approach with raised eyebrows. He had lived for 400 years, and he had never seen a human act so boldly in his presence. "I have something to tell you," Yuna said, "something important about the creature, about Bjol." The Emperor leaned forward. "You gave it a name." "Yes, and it showed me something, a vision, a warning." Yuna told him everything. She told him about the ancient time before the Empire. She told him about the creatures like Bjol, the ones who had fought against the darkness. She told him about the void that consumed worlds, the enemy that had been defeated but not destroyed. And she told him that the enemy was coming back. Emperor D listened in silence. When Yuna finished, he did not speak for a long time. He sat on his throne, ancient and tired, the weight of 1,000 worlds pressing down on him. The prophecies mention something like this, he said finally. The unraveling of the veil, the return of the darkness. We always thought they were metaphors, old stories to frighten children. They are not metaphors, Yuna said. They are warnings, and if Bjol dies, we will have no way to fight what is coming. The emperor called his advisors. He called his generals. He called the scientists and the historians and everyone who might know something useful. They gathered in the great council chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds, all of them arguing and debating and questioning. Some believed Yuna's warning. Others thought she was crazy, or lying, or being tricked by the creature. How could anyone trust visions from a monster that had killed thousands of people? But while they argued, the astronomers were searching. They pointed their most powerful telescopes at the edges of known space, looking for anything unusual. And what they found silenced every voice in the room. At the edge of the galaxy, entire star systems had gone dark. Stars that had burned for billions of years were simply gone. Planets that had been full of life were now empty rocks drifting through void. Something was out there, something was moving, and it was coming closer. The council fell into chaos. Some demanded immediate action. Others wanted to flee. A few suggested surrender, though no one knew how to surrender to something that simply consumed everything in its path. Emperor D raised his hand, and the room went quiet. We need more information, he said. We need to understand what we are facing, and we need to find a way to fight it. He turned to Yuna. The creature Bjol, it fought this enemy before. Does it remember how? Yuna shook her head. Its memories are broken. It has been alone too long, but it said something else. It said there were others like it, other guardians. They were scattered across the galaxy after the ancient war. Some might still be alive, waiting in cells like this one. Find them, the Emperor said. Find them and wake them. It is our only chance. That night, Captain T came to see Yuna. She was sitting outside Cell 0, looking at the stars through a small window. She looked tired, more tired than he had ever seen her. How are you feeling? He asked. Scared, Yuna admitted. I did not expect any of this. I was just a xenobiologist on a small research station. I helped animals. I never thought I would be responsible for saving the galaxy. Captain T sat down beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Can I tell you something? He said finally. Something I have never told anyone. Yuna nodded. 10 years ago, I was leading a patrol near the border systems. We encountered a hostile species, ones that used psychic attacks. My entire unit was killed. 12 soldiers, good people, all of them dead in seconds. Their minds just broke, like glass hitting stone. He paused, his hands shaking slightly. I survived because I was knocked unconscious at the start of the attack. When I woke up, everyone else was gone. For years, I blamed myself. I thought I was weak. I thought I should have been stronger, should have protected them. Yuna looked at him with gentle eyes. She did not speak, just listened. But watching you these past weeks, Captain T continued, I have learned something. Strength is not about being immune to fear. It is not about being harder or tougher than everyone else. It is about moving forward even when you are terrified. It is about caring for others even when it would be easier to run away. He met her eyes. You are stronger than any soldier I have ever known, not because you do not feel fear, but because you feel it and you keep going anyway. Yuna smiled, a small and tired smile. Thank you, she said. In Cell 0, Bjol was growing stronger every day. Its body filled out, muscles rebuilding over ancient bones. Its fur grew thick and dark, swallowing light like it used to. Its eyes burned brighter, 2 stars in the eternal darkness. But it was still weak compared to what it once was. The centuries of starvation had taken their toll. Bjol needed time to recover, time they might not have. There is something I need to tell you, Bjol said to Yuna one evening. Something about the other guardians. Yuna sat close to the massive creature, no longer afraid of its size or its presence. What is it? We were not always prisoners, Buell said. Once, long ago, we were honored. We stood beside the civilizations of that time, protecting them from the darkness. We were partners, allies, friends. What happened? Yuna asked. The war ended. The darkness was pushed back, and gradually the civilizations forgot why they needed us. They started to fear us instead. One by one, we were captured, imprisoned, sealed away. They called us monsters because they no longer remembered that we were guardians. There was deep sadness in Buell's voice, a loneliness that stretched across thousands of years. The others are still out there, Buell continued. I can feel them faintly. Some are sleeping. Some are dying. Some may already be gone. But if you can find them, if you can reach them, they might wake for you. Why me? Yuna asked. Because you are human. Your minds are different. Your chaos protects you from our psychic fields. You are the only species that can approach us without being destroyed. Buell lowered its massive head until its burning eyes were level with Yuna's face. And because you showed me kindness when everyone else showed me fear. If the others feel what you feel, if they experience the same compassion, they will wake. They will remember what they were meant to be. Yuna reached out and touched Buell's face. Its fur was cold, like touching the surface of a frozen star. But beneath that cold she felt something warm, something alive. I will find them, she said, I promise. The next day, Emperor D made an announcement to the entire empire. He told them about the darkness at the edge of the galaxy. He told them about the ancient guardians. He told them about the human woman who had done the impossible. And he told them that he was placing his hope in humanity. It was a strange moment for the galaxy. For decades, humans had been considered the least important species in the empire. They were primitive, simple, barely worth noticing. But now, everything was different. Yuna received messages from all over the galaxy. Some were offers of help. Some were questions. Some were angry, refusing to believe that the fate of the universe might depend on such a young and weak species. But from Earth, Yuna received a message that meant more than all the others. It was from her sister Hana. She had seen the announcement. She had heard about what Yuna was doing, and she had made a decision. I am joining the volunteer corps, Hana wrote. I do not know if I am brave like you, but if there are guardians out there who need help, if there are creatures who need kindness, then I want to be part of that. I want to help. Yuna read the message 3 times, then she smiled. Humans were coming, the keepers were beginning to gather, and the stars themselves would bear witness to what happened next. 6 months later, Yuna stood on the bridge of a small starship, looking out at the endless stars. Behind her sat her crew, a group of humans that the galaxy had started calling the Keepers. They were not soldiers. They were not warriors. They were veterinarians and animal handlers, scientists and caretakers. There was a retired doctor named Mina who had spent 30 years helping injured creatures. There was a young man named Jun who worked at an animal rescue center on Earth. There was even an elderly woman named Sue, who had run a cat sanctuary for 50 years before volunteering for this mission. The galaxy thought they were crazy. These soft, gentle humans were going to wake ancient creatures that had killed thousands of warriors. It seemed impossible. It seemed like suicide. But Yuna knew something the galaxy did not. She knew that strength was not always about power. Sometimes, strength was about kindness. Sometimes, the bravest thing you could do was reach out to something that frightened you and offer it your hand. Their first mission took them to a frozen moon at the edge of known space. The moon had been abandoned centuries ago, but ancient records mentioned a sealed chamber deep beneath the ice. Another guardian, sleeping in the cold. The chamber was similar to Cell Zero, a long corridor, walls covered with warning symbols, a door that no one had opened in thousands of years, and beyond that door, a presence so terrifying that the local species had long ago fled the entire system. Yuna led the way, but she was not alone. The other keepers followed behind her, each one feeling the psychic pressure but refusing to turn back. Their minds were loud and chaotic, filled with thoughts and feelings and memories that no guardian could easily touch. They reached the door. Yuna placed her hand against the cold metal and it opened. Inside, they found a guardian even larger than Bjol. Its body was covered in white fur, pale as snow, and its eyes were dim with centuries of sleep. It looked dead, but Yuna could feel a faint pulse of life still burning somewhere deep inside. The creature stirred when they entered. Its psychic field crashed against their minds like a wave against rocks, but the keepers did not fall. They stumbled, they gasped, they felt fear unlike anything they had experienced before, but they kept moving forward. The elderly woman, Sue, stepped ahead of the others. She moved slowly, carefully, her body bent with age but her spirit unbroken. She approached the massive creature with the same calm she had used 1,000 times at her cat's sanctuary. "Come now," she said gently. "You must be cold and hungry. We are here to help." The guardian's dim eyes focused on her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, incredibly, it lowered its massive head toward the old woman's outstretched hand. It remembered. Somewhere deep in its ancient mind, it remembered what it was like to be treated with kindness. Over the following months, the keepers traveled across the galaxy. They visited forgotten worlds and abandoned stations. They descended into cells that had been sealed for longer than most civilizations had existed. At each location, they found a guardian, and at each location, they approached with the same strange courage. Not every guardian woke easily. Some were hostile, their minds so damaged by isolation that they lashed out at anything that came near. Some were catatonic, unresponsive to any attempt at connection. And some were already dead, their bodies nothing but dust and memories. But many of them responded. They felt the humans approaching, felt the chaos of their minds and the warmth of their intentions. And they remembered. They remembered a time when they were not feared but loved. They remembered what it meant to be guardians instead of monsters. By the time the darkness reached the edge of the Empire, Yuna had awakened 11 guardians. It was not enough. Bjol had told her there were once hundreds, but 11 was better than one. The guardians gathered on Gorieo Prime, the first time creatures like them had been together in thousands of years. They stood in a circle beneath the stars, massive shapes of shadow and light, their eyes burning with ancient fire. Around them stood the keepers, small human figures who had made this impossible reunion possible. It was a strange sight. The most terrifying creatures in the galaxy, standing beside the weakest species anyone had ever seen. But there was no fear between them now. There was only purpose. The darkness arrived 3 days later. It was not like anything the Empire had ever faced. It was not an army with ships and weapons. It was a void, a hunger, a presence that consumed everything it touched. Stars winked out as it passed. Planets crumbled into nothing. The light itself seemed to flee from its approach. The Imperial fleet tried to fight. Their most powerful weapons did nothing. Their shields collapsed like paper. Ships vanished without a trace, swallowed by the endless hunger. But then the Guardians moved. They launched themselves into space, their bodies surrounded by energy that bent the laws of physics. They met the darkness at the edge of the system, and they fought. The battle was beyond description. Forces older than the stars clashed in the void between worlds. The Guardians were few and the darkness was vast, but they had something they had lacked before. They had purpose. They had connection. They had remembered what they were fighting for. And they had humans. Yuna stood on the observation deck of the Imperial flagship, watching the battle unfold. Beside her were the other keepers, their faces pale but determined. They could not fight in the void. They could not wield the ancient powers of the Guardians, but they could do something else. They could believe. Through the psychic link that connected them to the Guardians, they sent their strength. Not physical strength, but something deeper. Hope. Love. the stubborn human refusal to give up even when everything seemed lost. They filled their minds with memories of home, of family, of all the small, beautiful things that made life worth living. And the Guardians felt it. In the depths of the battle, facing an enemy that had haunted them for ages beyond counting, they felt the warmth of human hearts reaching out to them. They were not alone anymore. They had friends. They had family. They fought harder than they had ever fought before. The darkness screamed. It was a sound that echoed across dimensions, a cry of rage and hunger and something like fear. For the first time in its endless existence, it had encountered something it could not consume. The chaos of human minds, amplified through the Guardians, was a noise it could not silence, a light it could not extinguish. The battle lasted for 3 days. When it was over, the darkness was not destroyed, not completely. Such an ancient enemy could not be killed so easily, but it was wounded, weakened, driven back into the spaces between stars where it would take centuries to recover. The Guardians returned to Goryeo Prime, exhausted but alive. The Empire celebrated with joy and disbelief. Against all odds, they had survived. In the aftermath, everything changed. Humans were no longer the primitive newcomers. They were the keepers of the Guardians, the bridge between mortal species and the ancient protectors of reality. Every world wanted human ambassadors. Every species wanted to understand how such a simple people could do what warriors and scientists had failed to do for thousands of years. But Yuna did not care about politics or fame. When the celebrations ended, she returned to Cell Zero. It was not a prison anymore. It was a sanctuary, a place where Bjol could rest and recover in peace. She found the massive creature lying in the darkness, its eyes dim with exhaustion. The battle had cost it dearly, but when it sensed her approach, it lifted its head and made that strange sound that might have been a laugh. "You came back," it said. Of course, Yuna replied. She sat down beside the enormous creature, just as she had done so many times before. "I said I would." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Bjol spoke again. "You know, in all my years, I never imagined this. I never imagined that my salvation would come from a species that domesticated wolves and called them good boys." Yuna laughed, a bright sound in the ancient darkness. "That is the thing about humans," she said. "We make family out of anything." Bjol looked at her with those burning eyes. "Family, yes, I think I understand that word now." Outside the sanctuary, the galaxy was celebrating. Songs were being written about the battle, about the Guardians, about the humans who had saved everything. Yuna's name was known on 1,000 worlds. She was a hero, a legend, a symbol of hope. But in that moment, she was just a woman sitting beside her friend, enjoying the quiet after the storm. A message arrived from Earth. It was from Hana, who had spent the past months helping to care for the awakened Guardians. She wrote about how strange and wonderful it was, working alongside creatures that could destroy worlds but chose instead to be gentle. She wrote about the friends she had made, both human and Guardian, and she wrote about how proud she was of her sister. Yuna read the message twice, then she smiled. The darkness would return someday. The Guardians knew this, and so did the Keepers. The enemy between the stars was wounded but not destroyed. There would be more battles, more struggles, more moments when everything hung in the balance. But that was a problem for another day. For now there was peace. For now there was hope. And in a galaxy that had once feared the darkness, there was finally light. Yuna reached out and scratched behind Bjol's massive ears. The ancient Guardian, the terrifying beast that had been alone for nearly 4,000 years, closed its burning eyes and began to purr. The galaxy had always feared the things that lurked in the dark. They never imagined that the key to befriending them was a species foolish enough to look at a predator and say, "I bet I can pet that." But humans had always been a little bit foolish. And sometimes, Yuna thought, that was exactly what the universe needed.